Welcome to the Big Biz Show.
I'm your number one fan, man. Woo!
Featuring insight and analysis that's second to most.
You don't impress me.
With Russ T. Nailz.
Boogity doo.
And Sully something.
You think he's a real man while you're being tucked in.
Taking a professional look at the markets and investing and stuff through bloodshot eyes.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's just gibberish.
Now, here's Russ and Sully.
Live from the Jump Television Studios in sunny San Diego, California. About 50, 60 million television homes strong. 150 radio stations. You saw our brand new website there for our TV audience. And for our, what are you doing? You're picking something out of your teeth there? Oh, you got some caramel corn in your teeth, don't you? Yeah. That stuff will, yeah, that's good. You got like that's shrapnel, by the way. You ever eat a whole handful of that caramel corn and just sneeze?
I think I just...
I mean, I have.
Have you ever whistled on crackers?
No, I mean, honestly, it's if you eat that stuff and all of a sudden something tickles your nose, I mean, it's like, it's like an IED. Wow. What the hell was that?
Look at that thing. It was like
Is that a...
Oh, my God. That's a molar.
Wait, Russ, that was your molar. Hey, good to have you along today. We were just talking to the TV audience a minute ago about a company called Hoi Fong Foods who makes sriracha.
I can't help but laugh.
The Hoi Fong was the name of the boat the guy came over.
I got you.
But what was interesting is this man who came over from Vietnam to create, and sriracha's that stuff with the green top. You know, it's a real hot sauce, red sauce. Mm-hmm. I have it in everything, by the way.
Yeah.
I mean, in fact, I was at one point when I was married, my ex-wife said to me, you work out a lot and you can't eat a lot of that stuff because when you sweat, you smell like garlic. I had to cut back on it.
Yeah.
Because it was coming out of my pores.
Smell like a wrestler.
But what's interesting is this one little business. This guy comes over from Vietnam. He starts this business, which is now a $100 million company, and he keeps it in the same neighborhood. And he has created so many jobs. He's lifted the city of industry out of poverty.
Yeah.
By himself. We're going to talk to a guy here, Camilo Galvis. Is with Imperative Advisors. He'll be talking to us in a minute. He's good friends with our good friends at 1-800-PR provider of 2008. Now, do you know what the rates are? Now, have we ever paid zero? Have you paid zero for your home loan or your car loan? Have you paid zero?
Nope.
Not a single person's paid zero. Guess who gets to pay zero?
The government.
The banks pay zero.
The government.
Because the banks borrow money from the pardon me.
Here we go.
The discount window.
Little residual shrapnel from my popcorn.
I didn't even
so
eat it.
who's borrowing money from who now? The
bank borrows money from the Fed. Yeah, bank borrows money from the Fed.
At 0%.
At 0% and charge you what on your credit card?
A good 20.
Yeah, even good credit people
17.
charge you 17, right?
Uh-huh.
This is the biggest scam in history. This is why you need to look at the book, The Creature from Jekyll Island.
Right.
And I am not a conspiracy theorist. Mm-hmm. But the banking industry blows. I mean, think about it. It does. I'm sorry. We have no bank sponsors as a result of that. You ever hear me say brought to you by B of A?
No.
No. So anyway, Fed slashed interest rates to zero in December of 2008 to stimulate the economy, to boost the housing market during the Great Correction, the Great Recession. And so this rate hike, if you think about it, is sort of a testament, sort of a comment to how far our economy has come. Because let's keep in mind,
we're going to do
markets
good.
Back. We're doing good. Real estate markets back.
Punish them.
Unemployment is low, if you believe that sort of a number coming out of this administration.
Yeah.
In the meantime, we told you the story of sriracha and how this man lifted his community, refusing to sell his company along the way. I mean, that's not why he lifted the community. He lifted the community because he stayed there. But here to talk a little bit about that sort of thing, Camilo Galvis is the CEO of Imperative Advisors, and he's here to talk to us about lifting communities out of poverty, and he's been doing that successfully for some time. Camilo, thanks for joining Big Biz Show. How are you, sir?
How are you, Sully, and how are you, Russ? And thank you so much for having me on your program.
So listen, we just told the story about the guy in sriracha who sort of single-handedly lifted his community out of poverty, and it's a terrific small business story. But tell us a little bit about what you guys do there. So I think it's a little different spin.
So, for the past 5 years, we have been working hard in developing a model that basically allow us to bring an entire community out of poverty in 5 years or less, and while recovering 100% of the invested funds and actually generating some market competitive returns. So
when you talk about lifting a community out of poverty, give us an example of that. What does that mean?
So that means that after the 5-year process, you end up with a community that, for example, has access to structural housing By that I mean anti-seismic and thermoadaptive. They have access to telecommunications technology, both the internet and access to phone services. They have access to electricity. We eliminate something called the poverty tax, which is basically the highest premium that people usually pay when it comes to the basic food basket that usually happens in people in these marginal communities. We provide access to healthcare, a comprehensive healthcare system, and then clean the water and manage the waste. Have a waste management process that is self-sustainable, of course.
So with respect to that, I guess my question needs to be, give us an example of a community where that's worked. Is there a community, a news story that we could turn to sort of
like Compton or something?
Yeah, I mean, is there a place where that has happened?
So that's an interesting question. So in the past 5 years, what we did was basically test these different items, these different variables like housing and then again the elimination of the poverty tax, etc., through different social enterprises in different communities. This January, that's upcoming in 2016, it's the first time that we're actually going to start working in a community by plugging in and bundling together all these different services and all these different companies in achieving a long-term sustainable goal of eventually lifting the entire community out of poverty.
How do you do it? I mean, how is it done?
Step one.
So that's also a great question. So the way in which we do it is through an investment fund. It's actually a convertible debt fund. What we do is that we bundle together different social enterprises, and the spectrum of social enterprises has exploded in the past 8 years.
Well, stand by. Hey, Camilo, stand by there. First of all, we want to talk about, folks, what a convertible debt is, number one. And number two, are we going to a break yet? Am I too early? Am I too early? Okay, well, either way. So I want to talk about what convertible debt is.
Well, sure, that's easy. That's a debt that has the roof can go down on sunny days.
We're converting debt. Yeah. We're converting debt to equity is what he's talking about here. Okay, so basically, let's say
sell it.
Well, you could.
Okay,
which would be a bond. But think about this. Let's say you loan the guys that make these Emmys money. Okay. Now they owe you $100.
Yeah.
Okay. And they say, you know what, Russ? Instead of us paying you back, I'm going to give you $200 worth of the ownership of the company.
Oh, that's kind of good.
That's convertible debt. And that's a very, very simple way to put it. But we're going to have Camilo break that down for us. His name is Camilo Galvis. He is the CEO of Imperative Advisors. And he allows investors to benefit as well as these communities to benefit. And
is it U.S. or all over the world?
We'll talk to him. We'll ask him.
It looked like another part of the world.
That did there. But then again, there's parts of Compton that look like another parts of the world. There's parts of San Diego that look like that too.
Thank you.
Stand by. Big Biz Show, bigbizshow.com. Go visit our new website. Here it is right here. You can see it. All the cool stuff. And you'll start seeing interviews on there shortly.
Especially that part.
There's the other part of the website.
Wow. Look at it.
Look at that website.
Hey, radio people, you ain't missing much.
You're not. Just there it is.
Wow.
This is the Big Biz Show, the money talk show with less bang for your buck. Here again, Russ T. Nailz and Sully.
Big Biz Show. BigBizShow.com. Good to have you along today. Yeah, so the Sriracha guy, he didn't do what now?
Well, he didn't trademark the name because it's not really trademarkable. It's like it would be saying ketchup.
Yeah.
You know, in wherever the hell he's from.
No, Sriracha's that stuff with that lime green top on it.
It's in everything now.
It was like the #1 costume 2 years ago.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Who Fong Foods?
So anyway,
Who flung poo?
Yeah, there we go. Camilo Galvis.
There we go. Look at that.
Look at that.
It's sometimes called the rooster sauce because of that logo.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's the logo.
And he's really made
What's
it
the bottle
famous.
look? The bottle's got the green top too, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
The Camilo Galvis is the CEO of Imperative Advisors, talking about lifting communities out of poverty using invested funds and generating good returns for investors. And what's interesting, you talked about convertible debt. Did I explain that convertible debt accurately, Camilo?
You did a perfect job, yes, sir.
Okay, so how does that work in the investment world? So give us an idea of how you'd structure a deal like that.
So the first thing that we do, of course, is we have managed to put together a very large universe of social enterprises that have become very efficient at eventually being able to cater to the people at the base of the income pyramid while also generating important returns. I mean, they're self-sustainable. These are not charities or non-for-profits. These are full services companies that eventually are making very interesting returns, and they've been exploding and growing in numbers since the year 2008 until now. So what we do basically is we take a look at, we analyze various different communities, figure out what are the necessities of each individual community, and then at the same time take a look at this universe of social enterprises. Then we bundle together these social enterprises tailored to each individual community, and we do it in a way in which we take into consideration basically the capacity to maximize the number of people to whom we provide these goods and services as to lift them out of poverty, while at the same time making sure that our capital allocation is maximizing investors' yield. And in that respect, the way in which we do it, as I was mentioning earlier, is through an investment vehicle that eventually allow us to provide the capital to these social enterprises so that they can then in turn finance their services to the actual communities, and then afterwards repay to us the debt with a marginal, with an important market return. And just something that is very important to note is that we don't need to change the productivity of any of these communities or basically their income level, and we work while making sure that we never have them spending more than 40% of the household income to which they have available.
Now, do you go out to the public, or are these big investors that do this, or big ants? Like, what's the minimum investment, for example?
So at this stage in the process that we're starting early next year, and what we've been doing for the past 2 years as well, we're working with private investors and some institutional investors, and the minimum investment has been at around $500,000. However, our objective in the long run, as we start deploying this in a larger scale, our objective is to eventually be able to start lifting communities out of poverty at an industrial pace. Is eventually to get as low as the $10,000, $20,000 mark in order to be able to do this work.
Now, do you start with basics as far as bringing things in, or what's the first thing you look for?
Yeah.
To set up.
So the way in which we do it is we go to a specific country, we take a look at all the different communities which are under every single definition categorized as poor communities, and then we eventually figure out three things within the community: the size of the population, obviously their geographic location, and besides that, the household income of the community. That we put inside a pipeline of potential communities, and then we do an analysis on every single potential social enterprise that exists, and we get an understanding on their cash flow and their potential returns per dollar invested. And then under a very clever mathematical model that we put together with Columbia University here in New York City, we eventually figure out the perfect allocation to go ahead and do this work while taking into consideration the optimization of investor returns.
Camilo, could this model work in the U.S., like in poverty-stricken areas? Obviously you'd have to raise more money because obviously it's a lot bigger piece to tackle. But like, let's talk about a neighborhood or a community.
Detroit.
Could that happen?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, actually, many of the enterprises that we're using for this purpose, and we are currently focusing big time in Mexico, and I can elaborate on why that is the case. However, many of the social enterprises with which we're working were actually created here in the United States, are based in the United States, and we have done work with them here in the U.S. in different communities, including, for example, in New York City, in the Red Hook neighborhood in Brooklyn.
So with respect to why Mexico versus, let's say, Costa Rica or other impoverished cities? So
there are basically two considerations. The first one is that Mexico has a very large population, 130 million people, very wealthy country for the standards of a developing economy. However, 45% of the population live in poverty. And the important thing here, and one of the things that we're trying to prove next year that we can do successfully, is basically become an outsourcing alternative for governments to lift communities out of poverty. Mm-hmm. So how does that work? We're having conversations with the Mexican government where we're saying, okay, guys, if in 5 years from today, X and Y community have 100% of the people have access to structural housing, 95% of the people have access to telecommunications and phone services, 100% of the people have access to a comprehensive healthcare system, and so on and so forth. Eventually, what we are trying to get is an arrangement whereby they pay us 1/5 of the budget that they were supposed to allocate to these communities for their social mobility. So in that process, what we're trying to do is make sure that we can implement at a nation level the program, engaging in this interesting relationship with the government, and that eventually would allow us to provide even a highest yield to our investors from what we currently have. Just one thing that I want to clarify is that we do not need the government to do the work that we do, and we can still work with returns that vary between 5 to 8% as we stand. However, if we get them involved, I think that we can do this work at a larger scale and also provide a better yield for our investors.
Now, are you folks publicly traded as a fund, or are you privately held?
We're privately held, and we expect to remain privately held for at least the next 24 months.
And this convertible debt that you put together, those are all structured as private investments. They're not they're not investing into a public company, then dropping that money down.
Yes, almost since the industry is kind of only starting to mature right now, 95% of the social enterprises that we work with are privately held as well. So this convertible debt is done at a private level between the fund and the social enterprises.
Interesting. So long story short, by the way, if you start considering, sort of how this model works, it works obviously for the communities that they are putting the money in.
Oh, yeah.
But it's another, it's an alternative investment vehicle. And what historical returns did you say one more time?
So if we don't work with government support, with a government engagement and pay for success in the long run, we are moving within the bandwidth of 5 to 8%. If we eventually engage with governments, we could go up north of 10%.
Why is that? Because you're doubling the money that they're matching funds, sort of.
Actually, because they're giving us basically a fraction of the budget that they usually have for this sort of communities. However, what we are telling them is if we are successful in doing our work without getting you guys involved, and in a couple of years from today, we have fulfilled specific objectives in terms of social development and environmental sustainability, you pay us a fifth of that budget that you currently have, and that allow us to go from the 5 to 8% to almost north from 10 to 12%.
Boy, good stuff. I love that. Hey, listen, Camilo, nice work. We'd love to have you back on with us again, and of course, Imperative Advisors. If you have any interest in investing, just go to imperativefund.com. We'll tweet it out to our group. We'll put it on our website along with the interview. Camilo Galvis, there you go, doing good, Rusty.
That was heavy.
Thank you so very much, gentlemen.
Thanks, right. James Hurston's coming up with us next on the business of Hollywood and the business of all things. I haven't talked to him in a while. Also, I got some news about the fact, Rusty, you're just like the millennials. Maybe not you personally. Well, yeah, you are.
Excuse me?
Big Biz Show. BigBizShow.com. Stand by.